These two fine young ladies have 10 minutes to make their presentation to us. Just so you're aware, Trustee Simmons to my right will give you a 2-minute warning and then a 30-second warning. You don't have to get the 1-minute warning on the tape. Only 2 minutes and 30 seconds. The 1 minute's for the 5-minute one. So, all right, and much like when you get down to the 30 seconds, we start the music. It's like the Academy Awards, and I'm just teasing, of course. So, yeah, go ahead. Thank you. So, without further ado, if we can get you to introduce yourselves first, and then you're off. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Yui Hashimoto, and I'm a graduate student in geography at McMaster University, and I want to thank you all for listening to our presentation tonight.
And I'm Jeanette Eby, and I also work with Yui at McMaster. I'm also working on my master's in geography.
So, Falling into Place, this is a reference to John Terpstra's book about Hamilton and his attachment to Hamilton. So we wanted to introduce ourselves a little bit and why this is important to us. And so our research in human geography, my research in particular is around food security with single women in the neighborhood that encompasses Parkview's catchment area. And Jeanette's research is about sense of place among single women. And so what is human geography? Human geography, we understand how people relate to their environment and how, in particular, urban environments are important to people and how people create meaning in where they live. So how can human geography contribute to this conversation? There's a concept in human geography called sense of place. So one's attachment to a place, whether it's, for example, somewhere small like a school, or a neighborhood or a city, etc. And then, so why is Parkview and this North Arc process important to us? Well, Parkview was the first introduction to the neighborhood, and we just felt this deep sense of attachment instantly when we walked in. And we felt that it was important to contribute to the neighborhood in some way, since people in the neighborhood had contributed so much to our research.
So bear with me, I was losing my voice today, so I'll try my best. So Parkview was a very welcoming place to us because we're doing our research projects in the neighborhood surrounding Parkview and the stadium in the lower city. So we became part of this process of the accommodation review and went to some meetings and connected with some of the principal and the teachers in the school. And so we were learning as we went of how the process was going. And we're quite concerned when we learned that the accommodation review committee proposed closing Parkview as well as Delta, as well as Sir John A. Macdonald, and building one big school. We saw from the report that there was a plan to create a committee around accommodating the students from Parkview and making sure that there were programs that they needed and that they still had everything that they had at the old school. But we think that it's really important to think about the place as a whole, that the report says Parkview is not solely defined by the physical structure of the building, which is true, but in human geography, our kind of core mantra is place matters, and Parkview is evidently a safe place for the students there, and it's a place of social support where people feel cared for, where the teachers have, from what we've learned and heard from people, where the teachers are very engaged and very caring for the students. So we think that it's a landscape of care itself, and that's kind of a geographical term where there are places that enable these kind of caring, supportive interactions between people. So we think that it's really important to consider that when thinking about kind of just merging it into a larger school. The next couple slides are about this Hamilton Social Landscape Report and how that fits into this whole discussion around the accommodation review. So this was released last year, May 2011, I believe, from the Social Planning Research Council, which probably many of you have read. And one of the groups that they talk about the groups that are increasing in Hamilton's population. And youth are one of the groups they talk about, that they're one of the fastest growing groups. And linked to that conversation, the report talks about school closures and how specifically the lower city and East Hamilton has already seen the most dramatic reduction in the number of schools, and this is just going to add to that. And it specifically says high schools are enormously strategic assets to neighborhoods. And in my research isn't about school closures whatsoever or high schools. It's about sense of place and places that matter to women in their community. And in my interviews, several conversations have come up around the school closures and how whether or not they have kids who are going to go to high school or not, the presence of a school and knowing that there's programs there, knowing that it's a meeting place in their community is very important to people. And knowing that there's going to be another loss is a concern for a lot of the women that I've talked to. And around the same line is looking at poverty, that poverty has very high rates among newcomer youth, and this is also linked to dropout rates, that the highest rates of high school dropouts are in the neighborhoods where these schools are being proposed to be closed. So these are things we have to think about. Will students be going to traveling far to go to a new school or to go to whatever school they're designated once their own high school is closed?
So talking more about sense of place. So I've only been able to attend one other of the school meetings, and in that meeting there was a conversation about sense of place within the classroom, that Parkview students would be included in different programs, and everything would be in place so that students would feel a sense of belonging. But we were also concerned about the school's role in the neighborhood. As Jeanette said, schools aren't just a place where students go to, but community members also feel that schools are an important asset to the neighborhood. I asked a question actually about neighborhood sense of place and what the impact of school closures would do to sense of place. And the neighborhood was referred to as the downtown core, and I would actually argue that everyone that I've ever spoken to who comes from those neighborhoods doesn't consider themselves as a part of downtown, and everyone has different definitions of what their neighborhood is. And the biggest consideration that we want you to make is that, yes, emotion was left out of the conversation, but in thinking about sense of place, emotion is very important. You feel an attachment to something because it is a feeling. Connectedness, rootedness, and feeling like you're valued and supported. Those are all emotions that are extremely important, and we feel that the exclusion of emotion from the conversation actually isn't taking the whole conversation into consideration. So then we want to refer to the City of Hamilton's inclusivity lens, who has been included in the conversation about school closures and moving towards having a more sort of collaborative and inclusive process, and it again refers to feeling and reality of belonging, feeling like people belong to the process of what should happen to the schools in their neighborhoods.
So we hope that in considering the next steps of deciding whether to accept these proposals or what your decisions will be, we think that's really important to think of other possibilities, and specifically to think about the current neighborhood development strategies that are happening in Hamilton. I know that Paul Johnson, the director of the neighborhood development strategies, presented to the North Arc Committee a while back. And this is all about building capacity amongst neighborhoods and improving quality of life in neighborhoods. And it seems like taking the high schools out just kind of won't really facilitate that process. And there are opportunities to create partnerships. Like, for example, Parkview, I think, has already created a lot of community partnerships, and there are ways to use buildings that may not be at capacity with students, but maybe there's a community program or a recreation program or a health center that could be integrated into these buildings, and partnerships that will provide support to students more holistically, not only in the classroom, but in other aspects of their life. So the lower city is a priority area for the neighborhood development strategies right now, including, I live in the Beasley neighborhood downtown, and we've been very active in being involved in that. And I think it's important to integrate that with this process because it's going to impact people in the long term.
Okay, so in conclusion, the geography mantra, place matters, in thinking about both within the school environment and within the neighborhood environment, and remembering that emotion and this sense of belonging is a really important consideration in what the next step should be, and the role of the school in the neighborhood, and we hope that you will think outside of the box.
Thank you for listening.
Yeah.
Excellent, thank you very much. Some interesting thoughts for trustees to consider. So on that note, do we have any questions for clarification for the presenters? Yes, Trustee Johnstone.
Thank you for your presentation. I personally think that geography is a fascinating subject area and space and all those relations within. My question is, because you talked about the schools performing this function where they created community, created a sense of security, created what you identified or labeled as caring landscape. I'm just wondering if another entity could actually fill that role in the school's absence, such as a neighborhood house or a community policing center or something to that kind of matter, a library perhaps.
I think those definitely serve as kind of landscapes of care as well. I think ideally it would be both. It would be able to have, because the school is something that is reliable and routine for the students and the parents and the families who are connected to it, but so are community centers and libraries and things like that. So I think ideally it would be able to create a space that adds to what the school is already giving to the neighborhood. I don't know if it would replace the role that the school plays, but would definitely still contribute to the neighborhood, I think. Yeah.
Well, I think that you identified some important needs and regardless of the outcome that hopefully those, I guess, networks or supports can be put in place if in fact the school does close.
Trustee Orr.
Human geography is a fascinating subject, and you dealt with that by, through the chair, talking to the neighbors that are so significant and what happens when fragmentation occurs. Do you not feel that there, through research, that there could be another forum that could suffice in terms of creating neighborhoods? Because I'm thinking of students, and students build relationships quite nicely. They're in contact with each other, and with technology, all the texting that's going on, it's almost a technological neighborhood family, if you want to think of geography and technology as a human way of doing things. So my question is, so in terms of what weight would you put on your research in terms of having me reconsider or think about what you are really saying with regard to the students at Parkview School?
I think I understand the question, but please correct me if I'm wrong. I think for Parkview in particular, the place is really important because it's a bounded place where students go and they feel like they belong. And I don't think that any amount of technology is going to make them feel like they belong. And, you know, we've had accounts of students who say that, you know, they went to a composite school for middle school and it wasn't a supportive environment. They had all these accommodations in place, but yet it's the students, the camaraderie, it's the teachers, and it's the specific place that they're in together. I don't know if that answers your question.
I know what you're saying, but I mean that kind of mind thinking of human geography could be replaced in a, say, a composite secondary school in a wing, where those very students have opportunities to engage with other students. And when you think of society and the world, when they get out of their particular neighborhood, they have to address, in my opinion, have the skills to exist, because it doesn't mean they're going to stay in that neighborhood. I'm talking about the students and the youth. They have to be prepared to take on the task of belonging and become part of that human geography of the next place they go to. So,
I want to jump in, we got one
Okay,
more
thank
speaker
you.
and like 30 seconds left on the clock.
thank you.
Okay.
So maybe
Wish
we
to-
can go to one more speaker before, and then if you want to add something else, have student trustee Janice next.
Thank you very much. I had a question. I'm hopefully going to be able to phrase it in a coherent way. I was wondering, based on the points about poverty in newcomer youth, and we were just discussing that it's usually the newcomer parents that are slightly more disengaged from their community for lack of, whether it's information or just lack of comfort. So I was wondering if that was something that was also looked at in terms of the family environment in correlation to the school proximity, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, that's not something we've particularly thought about with regards to newcomer youth. We just thought that those were important kind of facts about the landscape in Hamilton to consider in more broadly, not just talking about Parkview or specific school, but talking more broadly about school closures and neighborhoods. But in terms of the family, I think a lot, at least from what we've experienced at the schools that we've gotten to know through our research, the family is very connected to the school. And whether that's that there are programs at the school that the parents attend, or whether they are involved in volunteering or whatever. So I think that is part of the strength of schools being in neighborhoods, is integrating the kids, the parents, and neighbors in making it an important place for everybody.
Okay, thank you, Jack. Now we're past the 5 minutes. Is it real quick, Trustee Brennan, because we allowed some commentary when this is only supposed to be questions for
I have a
clarification.
quick question to the presenters, and then I have 2 other questions that might be more for staff, so I'm not sure how you want to handle
So the
it.
question for the presenters, save the 2 questions for staff to the North night.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, for your generosity. I just want to thank you both for presenting a different way of thinking, or a new way of thinking as an extra layer on top of the other material that we're looking at, so I really appreciate that. My very specific question, though, is you made the comment that this particular group would not define themselves as being downtown, and it begged for me the question of how would they define themselves?
I think, so through our Jeanette and I's research and through conversations with people who live in the neighborhood, I would say that different people have different definitions of what their neighborhood is, whether it's the boundaries that bound the neighborhood, or whether it's the way that they name their neighborhood.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So I appreciate you 2 coming out tonight and bringing that your thoughts and presentation. It was well received and well done. Thank you.
Oh,
We can get
that wasn't
maybe-
ours.
We need somebody to move receipt or referral. So Trustee Brennan, you moving receipt?
Yes, thank you very much.
And Trustee Simmons seconding it. All right, so all in favor of receiving the delegation or the presentation? That is unanimous. Thank you very much.